me start then. So we're going to be using the poppy cluster, just because I haven't used it for ages and ages and ages really, and it's such a beautiful set. But I wanted to use it in sort of slightly different way, so I'm going to be using it with gift wrapped, but I'm also going to be doing a couple of cards that don't use gift wrapped. I'm also using the bold phrases, the nested stitch rectangles, the A2 ones, the latest ones, the nested scalloped and stitched rectangles, and my favouriteest ever set of stamps, the texture set. Okay, but only on one card, I think. Yeah, only on one card. So just some different things to use with your newer product. All right, and this is sort of where we're headed with the first one that I'm going to show you. So it's sort of, I did this and then I looked at it and I thought, I could have done it a little bit better. As I say, when I looked at it afterwards, I thought, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that. So on the one I'm doing today, I've done this and I've done that. So this one will look a little bit different, and I'm also using different colours. Now obviously there are two ways you can do this. You can stencil a piece of card and then cut your bow out, or you can cut the bow out and then place your stencil where you want it, and that's the option I've gone for. Okay, because of and I know I could use the peg die and make my card a bit longer and move it down the page, but I tend to just forget that I can do that. Okay, because, well, my brain's all over the place just lately, so I tend to forget that you can do that. But you can, of course, do that. Use the peg die on a piece of card so that you move your piece of card down the ultimate. Hi Connie. No problem, no problem. So I've done it my way, and I've cut the bow, and I'm going to place my stencil where I want it to appear on this bow. Okay, so as I said, I'm using the poppy cluster, and the first thing I always do when I get my stencils is take them out. Sometimes I write the name on, but I always number them. I always go over the numbers that are etched into the mylar with a Sharpie, because that way I know I'm going to use them the right way round and I'm not going to have any problems. So that's always my first job. All right, so let's go on and do this first layer. Now I said to you that I've placed this exactly where I want the flowers to appear, right? And you can see that I've made marks through and round the side of the stencil because I want them all to be in the same place every time. I thought this would be a way of making your bow look like a fabric bow rather than just a paper bow. So that's where I'm going with this and the three others that I'm gonna show you in a little while. So I've done one. Obviously I've done one in blues, okay, because you can get poppies in white, red, blue, purple, and yellow apparently. So the one that I've already stenciled ready to put together is in yellow. So I thought I would go traditional with this one and do this one in reds. So for my base layer, I'm going to use one of the first set of interference inks, and I'm going to go with Cherry Bomb. Now I am going to stick this down purely and simply because I really just don't want it to move. Okay, so I'm just going to give it an extra little bit of assistance, and then I'm going to go on with this fabulous Cherry Bomb. And the reason I've gone with Cherry Bomb as opposed to Strawberry Sundae is because I think this is a slightly deeper red, and that's really what I wanted. Okay, so that's why I've gone with this. I'm using Lisa's white texture card. Don't worry about the ink going onto your silicone mat, it'll wipe off, it's absolutely fine. And the other thing I did was I taped off the tabs on the side of the bow because I didn't want any ink on those tabs. Okay, I just wanted those to stay white. You don't have to, you can incorporate those into your stenciling as well if you wanted to, but I just didn't want to. So I think doing it this way, you can sight the stencil to feature as many of the flowers as you can. If you just stencil a piece of card, it's a little bit more difficult to place your die and cut it where you need to cut it. I know what I mean. I probably haven't explained that very well, but I just wanted to do it this way because it gave me a better finish. Okay, so take that first layer off, and of course taping the bow down also helps with it not moving. It shouldn't move because it's on your silicone mat, but just in case it does, then you've got that extra bit of security so that it doesn't move. So I'm going for my markings where I've gone around the corners, and I've gone through 3 of the holes here so that I know that this is going to be in the right place. Okay, again, I'm just going to tape it down. And what I thought I would do with this one is go in with anthracite. Okay, I was going to go in with a different red, but I've looked at the packaging, if I'm honest, and I thought I never think of doing black or grey, so I thought I'll go in with anthracite, and I'll just go along the lines. It might look absolutely rubbish, but then again it might look amazing, so who knows. But it's just a case, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's a piece of card at the end of the day, and really and truly nobody else knows if you make a boo-boo, do they? Because there's only you knows what you were going to do to start off with. So it's entirely up to you, really. Do whatever floats your boat, as they say. And it doesn't really matter whether you make a complete mess of it or it looks amazing. You can always just chuck it away and start again. Now the only thing I would say with these stencils is the detail on these flowers is the mylar is quite fine, so just have a bit of patience and go slow over them so that they don't lift, because once they lift and you've sort of inked where the line should be, it won't look the same. I mean, at the moment this looks an absolute hideous mess. I'm hoping that by the time I've finished it won't, but you never know, it might. Whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that like that. Nearly forgot that one there. Okay, and then just left that off. I do like the anthracite. I think it's a fabulous colour because it's not black, it's not grey. Oh, actually I quite like that. I'm quite pleased with that. See, when you're doing it, it might look absolutely hideous. But when you take it off, you might surprise yourself. So don't take it off, don't bin it while you're in the middle of it. It's going to go through probably an ugly stage before it gets to a beautiful stage. So just keep going with it. Now I'm going in with the stems of those flowers. So I'm going to start off with Margarita, just because it's one of my favourite colours. And I'm just going to fill those little gaps with that Margarita. And then when I add the other detail, I'm going to go in with the new Summer Garden, my new favourite in the second release of Interference inks. I think it's an absolutely fabulous colour, and it just lifts everything. Okay, so there's not much detail on there. I'm coming in with number 4. See, we've nearly finished the stenciling. It's so quick because they're just so brilliant. So I'm going to pop the lid on there, and then I'm going to come in with that Summer Garden. I'm going to go quite light because it's quite a dark colour, so I'm going to take off a lot of the colour in the lid and make sure that I've got my stencil in the right place, and then just come in lightly on those little apertures, but just taking off a little bit of that ink so that it's not too wet, because they are quite wet inks, but that's what gives them their shimmer and their beauty. So I'll lift that one off. See, it's just added enough of a green to those to just lift it a little bit. So finally, I'm going to come in with the centres of the flowers. Oops, no, missed the centres of the flowers. Now, again, because I'm working on quite dark colours, I want these to really stand out. So again, I'm going to be using the interference inks, and these are out of release 2. And I'm using Lemon Candy for the centres, and then over the top of that, I'm going to go in with Golden Sun. Because these, I just love the way these sort of sit on top of the colours that you've already put down. They're just amazing. I'm going to go quite heavy with them. See, they stand out. If I'd have used Early Sunrise, I don't think they would have stood out as much. You probably can't see it on the screen at the moment, but when I take it off and show you in a second, you will appreciate how much that stands out. So then I'm just going to go in with my Golden Sun and just do this extra detail here. And this is going to blend with that yellow, but lift the centres of those flowers. Amazing. And that's the beauty of those interference inks. I mean, all of Lisa's blending inks just blend on top of one another. You don't ever get that dirty, muddy colour when you blend in 2 colours together. Which inks, Susan? The second release of blending, or the second release? Which inks are you talking about? I haven't found an issue with any of them, I've got to be honest. So I'm happy with all of them, and I don't find them dry, so I think they'll be absolutely fine. So I'm just going to lift that tape off there, and I'm just going to show you how beautiful these colours just sit on top of those. See how these just sit on the top, and that you really see that centre really beautifully. Yeah, I just think that's really lovely, and I actually really like how that anthracite has just sort of blended over the top of that cherry bomb. I'm really pleased with that. I'm not going to use this one today because I've already done one that I've prepared. So I just want to wipe off that that ink. I thought I'd got a cloth there, but I haven't. I don't want it to dry because it'll, although it'll come off, it's better if you can do it while it's still wet. Okay, so that's that done. And then you would just run it through your die cutting machine to emboss it with your embossing folder. Okay, so it's a way of lifting your bow to make it look a little bit more interesting. It does look like a little cross, but of course once you've embossed it, you can take this piece and this piece out and just make it into a bow if you wanted, which I did with a piece that I'd done on Lisa's holographic card. So you can just take those pieces off and just make it into a bow if you wanted to. So you don't have to have these pieces, but once you've embossed it, it'll look more like a ribbon than it does a cross. Okay, so let's just put that to one side and just show you the one that I'd already done ready. So this is a 5x7 card, and this was the nested and stitched rectangles that I've used, and you can see that I've literally just brushed around the edge and then just pop this down on the base card, just eyeballing it. I never measure, as long as it looks straight I'm happy. Okay, and then what I did with the actual bow was I cut it again in a dark grey card, and I've just cut it down the middle so that I've got grey on both sides. Normally if you cut it you'd just have a shadow on one side, but I wanted shadow all the way round really. I slipped a bit here and I've sort of missed a bit, but I'm quite happy with that. But you can see once you emboss it, you see how the embossing folder puts all the creases of that bow in, and you know, the actual folded bow and the tails, and you can actually see it's a ribbon. Yeah, so I actually think it looks, once you've embossed it, it looks way better. Okay, so then I'm going to pop it down here. Now I've cut this so that it sits inside those stitched lines, okay, because that's actually how I wanted it. I didn't want it to sit outside the stitched lines, so that's how I've cut it down. Okay, and again I've put 3D pads on the back, so just guide it down slowly so that you still get that bow sitting inside those stitched lines like that. And then all I did with my bold phrases was I just inked a piece of card with the early sunrise and juicy pineapple, so that it gives this ombre effect, and then just cut it out and backed it onto white card. And again I've 3D'd that because that's going to sit at the side here, so I wanted that on the same level as the bow. So I just whip that off there and pop that down there. It's so simple, but I think it's so effective, and I actually prefer it to this one because I've done that grey shadow behind, and that's what I'm missing on this one. I mean, I'll still use this, but for me, putting that grey shadow behind it just lifts it that little bit, and it just gives it a little bit more definition. Yeah, so with the bow, what I thought I would show you is 3 different ways that I've inked it up. So for the first one, I used the layering cubes, and all I've done is, again, I've already die cut the shape, and I've laid the bow sort of at an angle across the stencil, because it's a 6x6 stencil, and obviously the bow sits proud top and bottom, but I wanted to actually ink the whole of the bow, so I've laid it across on a diagonal, and then I've just inked through. I think I've used Sweet Violet, Shocking Pink and Surf's Up on this one. So if I just run it through, just move my other cards, if I just run it through and then show you what I mean when I say it just pops once you've embossed it, and you can see those crease lines on the bow, I think it just lifts it beautifully. So I'm just going to run this through. Don't forget to change your plate combination for 3D embossing folders, and put it through at a slight angle so that you don't break that hinge. So this is the first one. Don't you think, once you've embossed it and you've got all that detail on that bow, I just think it lifts it and it just really pops. So that was the first one that I did. Then I thought I'd use the layering daisies because I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful stencil set. And again, I'm just going to pop it in here, line it up and run it through. I actually think I could do with a shim on this, because it does go through really quite easily, and I could probably just do with a small shim on it. But look at that, how fab is that? I think it just looks more like a fabric than a piece of paper, and I just think it's brilliant. I just think it's so clever. So then the last one I did was this was sort of more experimental, I suppose, and I've gone over the edge here with a bit of ink because I forgot to tape it off, but I used the Wisteria background that Claire used last week because it's one of my favourite sets. I love Wisteria, I think it's amazing, and I just thought, wonder what that would look like, whether it would work, and I think it does. I think it works. Yeah. See, once you've got those lines on, those embossed lines where it puts those creases like your piece of ribbon, I think it really works. I think it's ever so clever. So you see, you don't have to just cut it out in a plain coloured card. Just have a think about what other stencils you've got in your set, in your stash rather, and just have a go at doing something a bit different. The other one that would work really well, I think, is the layering stripes. You know, the one that you twist round. I think that would work really well as well. I like that one. But I think what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to put it through again, and I'm going to put a couple of shims with it to make that embossing just that little bit deeper. And that's down to my plate combination, not the embossing folder, because it's just amazing. So then I did this one, and I don't know whether any of you follow Jennifer Maguire on YouTube. She does some fantastic techniques and technique videos that are absolutely amazing. And I saw her do this, and I thought, I wonder what it would look like on the poppies. I wonder if it would work. And it does, but I think it would work on a folder that's got a lot more detail in it. But I am just going to show you how I did it, okay? Because I do think it looks really effective. In fact, it probably looks more effective on the camera than it does in real life. But I am going to show you how I've done it. So if you find the embossed side of your folder, and then take a metallic ink pad, this is just one that I've got from my stash, and just swipe the ink pad over the top of those flowers so that you're leaving a layer of ink over the top of those flowers. Be quite gentle with it, because I was a bit heavy-handed, and I think that's why I've got drag marks at the bottom of the folder. So be quite gentle, drag your ink pad across your embossing folder on the emboss side, and then this is a silver metallic ink pad, and then what I'm going to do is just go on top of that with a copper metallic ink pad, okay, only very lightly, and then I'm going to run it through the die cutting machine so that you can see what it looks like. And then I'm going to do something a little bit extra. So I'm going to put my card in there. Make sure your card's a little bit smaller than your embossing folder. Now, I probably haven't put enough ink on my embossing folder, so I will just run it through again. So I'm just going to go and do that one more time, and again go on with that copper just very, very lightly, just in a couple of places, and then pop it back in. I think if I pop it back on this side, I can line it up and then run it through again and know that it's in the right place. There we go. So if I just run it through again, and hopefully it'll work better this time, because it worked beautifully on the purple. So you've got ink on your deboss side. Hasn't really shown up very much on the pink, but what I did next was I used my brayer, and I used the shocking pink. So I'm going to just ink my brayer up with some ink. I do like this shocking pink, and I'm hoping it shows up on this piece of card, okay? And all you're going to do really is just go over this deboss side with your ink until you fill it with colour, okay? I'm not gonna do it all because we'll be here for ages, and with the thunder starting, I don't want to lose you. So if you carry on with that colour on top of there, you will end up with a similar sort of effect to what I've got here. Now this one's a lot more silver, and that's because I was really quite heavy-handed with the ink pad. I actually prefer this one because it's a lot more delicate, but once you've sort of backed it, matted and layered it, it gives a totally different look to your card, and then all you need is a really simple sentiment just to lift that card I just think it's a really clever idea, so you know, give it a go. But then just before we finish, I did another two, and on this one again I've done that ombre inking. I've just used Sweet Violet and I've left part of it white, but I've only used part of the stencil. I haven't embossed this because although I've watched Leanne's partial embossing, I haven't sussed how to just get this bit to work. So I've only used these 3 flowers here, okay, and all I've done really is just mask off these and these sort of stems here so that you can't see them. So you don't have to use the whole thing if you don't want to, yeah. So just look at what you've got. And oh, you're definitely on TV on Wednesday. Excellent. A one-day special. Brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. And you can see in the background that I've used one of the flowers, and I've used all the layers that apply to the flower that I've used, and I've just inked them in the background, okay. And the way I did that to make sure that I lined it up was I put my base one down and I left that down to go through with the second one and then the centres, and I just left the base one down and just added the extra layers on top of the base one so that I knew I was always in the right place. Okay, so you can do that. And then finally I did one in blue and I used the whole stencil, but what I did here was I pinched Claire's idea and I've used the script texture stamp actually on the folder and then run it through once I've done all my inking. So I've just, the actual texture stamp is on the embossing folder, so then it transfers to your card. So in the background here you can see that I used one of the other texture stamps, and I've just used one of the colours. I think I used Deep Ocean for this. This is Surf's Up, Deep Ocean and Juicy Pineapple, Margarita, and that Summer Garden Interference ink, which is my absolute favourite out of the second set. So again, it's just a simple sentiment, and this was from the latest lot of sentiments that came out just before the Christmas event. So, you know, you can mix and match everything with everything, like I've always said. So there's just a few different ones for you to have a go at, or attempt, you know, a version of, but just some different ideas to use your folder in different ways. And don't just use your bow as a bow in plain card. Just try and use some different stencils and place your stencils where you want the flowers to appear on the bow. You know, it's just something a little bit different, isn't it? So give it a go, you know. You never know what you can achieve until you try. So I will love you and leave you there. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. It's nice to see so many of you here. Have a fabulous week and stay safe. Bye now.